Our culture leads people to believe that hairstyle is a matter of personal preference, that hairstyle is a matter of fashion or convenience, and that how people wear their hair is simply a cosmetic issue. During the Vietnam War, however, an entirely different picture emerged, one that has been carefully covered up and hidden from the public view. In the earlier 90s, Sally was married to a licensed psychologist who worked at a VA medical hospital. Her husband worked with combat veterans with PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. Most of them had served in Vietnam. Sally said, "I remember clearly an evening when my husband came back to our apartment on doctor's cycle, carrying a thick, official-looking folder in his hands. Inside were hundreds of pages of certain studies commissioned by the government. He was in shock from the contents. What he read in those documents completely changed his life. From that moment on, my conservative, middle-of-the-road husband grew his hair and beard and never cut them again. The VA medical center let him do it, and other very conservative men in the staff followed his example. As I read the documents, I learned why." During the Vietnam War, special forces in the War Department had sent undercover experts to comb American Indian reservations, looking for talented scouts, for tough young men trained to move stealthily to rough terrain. They were especially looking for men with outstanding, almost supernatural tracking abilities. Before being approached, these carefully selected men were extensively documented as experts in tracking and survival. Some of these Indian trackers were then enlisted. Once enlisted, an amazing thing happened. Whatever talents and skills they had possessed on the reservation seemed to mysteriously disappear, as recruit after recruit failed to perform as expected in the field. Serious casualties and failures of performance led the government to contract expensive testing of these recruits, and this is what was found. When questioned about their failure to perform as expected, the older recruits replied consistently that when they received their required military haircuts, they could no longer sense the enemy. They could no longer access a sixth sense. Their intuition no longer was reliable. They couldn't read subtle signs as well or access subtle extrasensory information. So the testing institute recruited more Indian trackers, let them keep their long hair, and tested them in multiple areas. Then they would pair two men together who had received the same scores on all the tests. They would let one man in the pair keep his hair long and gave the other man a military haircut. Then the two men retook the tests. Time after time, the man with long hair kept making high scores. Time after time, the man with the short hair failed these tests, in which he had previously scored high scores. Here's a typical test. The recruit is sleeping out in the woods. An armed enemy approaches the sleeping man. The long-haired man is awakened out of his sleep by a strong sense of danger and gets away long before the enemy is close, long before any sounds from the approaching enemy are audible. In another version of this test, the long-haired man senses an approach and somehow intuits that the enemy will perform a physical attack. He follows his sixth sense and stays still, pretending to be sleeping, but quickly grabs the attacker and kills him, as the attacker reaches down to strangle him. This same man, after having passed these and other tests, then received a military haircut and consistently failed these tests and many other tests that he had previously passed. So the document recommended that all Indian trekkers be exempt from the military haircuts. In fact, it required that trekkers keep their hair long. This urban legend convinced me to make this video. If you look at it through Darwin's lens, the mammalian body has evolved over millions of years, and the body has a reason for every part of itself. Hair is an extension of the nervous system. It can be correctly seen as exteriorized nerves, a type of highly evolved phallus or antenna that transmits vast amount of important information to the brainstem, the limbic system, and the neocortex. Not only does hair in people, including facial hair in man, provide an information highway reaching the brain, hair also emits energy, the electromagnetic energy emitted by the brain into the outer environment. This has been seen in Kirlian photography, when a person is photographed with long hair and then re-photographed after the hair is cut. When hair is cut, receiving and sending transmissions to and from the environment are greatly hampered. This results in numbing out. Cutting of hair is a contributing factor to unawareness of the environmental distress in our local ecosystems. It is also a contributing factor to insensitivity in relationships of all kinds, and can contribute to sexual frustration. In searching for solutions for the distress in our world, it may be time for us to consider that many of our most basic assumptions about reality are in error. The Germanic tribes, the Native Americans, and many other tribal cultures knew about this. To them, hair wasn't an accessory, it was an extension of the nervous system. To cut it was to dull the senses, to become a blind animal in a predatory world, to become a ghost before you were even dead. For them, hair was mana, power, and a teeter to the ancestors. It was the physical manifestation of the spirit leaking out of the skull. All Germanic tribes revered hair. Long hair represented sovereignty and consequently personal freedom. In the Old Testament, hair was attributed qualities such as power and strength. The story of Samson and Delilah in the Bible contains much veiled truth for us. For when Delilah cut Samson's hair, the once undefeatable Samson was defeated. This should give us pause. Once the Europeans got enslaved by the church, short hair has become a symbol of submission, while long hair were those of the unsaved wilderness. Everyone can now form their own opinion. A contemporary example of this is the film Lord of the Rings. There too, all of the characters have long hair. Why is this? Well, because hair acts as an antenna. In those times, the life of the Native Americans were largely different from ours. The way they lived and treated themselves. Beside tribal raids, slavery, and human sacrifices, there was no school, no work, and no bills to pay. No EMF folk which rot their flesh. Simply being in the sun all day, resting or hunting with your tribe. It was heavily grounded, not so stressful as nowadays. The leftover of a little bit freedom, being able to disappear into the woods, has been cut. Every corner of the earth is lit up, mapped and monitored. The darkness has been killed, and with it, the soul's ability to hide. If you look at the sky today, it is bright and covered, almost scarred, because of geoengineering and chemtrails. It almost seems like that we have lost something we can't feel anymore. I like to compare hair with landscapes in nature. Think of your head as the earth. The skull is the crust, cold and firm. And your hair, that is the vegetation above. Like the growing grass and the flowers, who reach upwards, desperate to catch the light before winter kills them. When you leave your hair long, you are letting your own personal vitalness take over. You are becoming the landscape.